Have you ever watched an anime that within the first 5 minutes completely flips your world upside down? Not because of a bad script, but because the show deliberately drags you into the protagonist's chaos. Because that's exactly what Daemons of the Shadow Realm does. No warning, no warm-up, none of that comfortable settling in time most anime gives you. It just destroys everything, and by the time you realize you were safe in the wrong place, it's already too late. Today, we're diving into one of the most anticipated titles of 2026, a project carrying one of the heaviest names in modern anime history. And honestly, after following the first few episodes, it's safe to say, this anime has something different, something that goes beyond the expectations built by its creator's name. So settle in, because today we're going deep on Daemons of the Shadow Realm, the new work from Hiromu Arakawa, the same woman who created Fullmetal Alchemist. And you're gonna understand why this anime has real potential to become the defining shonen of 2026. But before we get into the anime itself, I need to tell you where all of this came from, because understanding the origin of this work is essential to grasping the weight of what we're watching. In December 2021, Hiromu Arakawa returned to the pages of monthly Shonen Gangan, the very same magazine that launched Fullmetal Alchemist back in the day, with a story called Yomi no Tsugai. In Japan, Yomi is the realm of the dead in Shinto mythology, and Tsugai means pair, duo, pairs from the underworld. The title alone says a lot. The work started quietly, no fanfare, but it kept growing, pulling in passionate readers, until July 2025 at Crunchyroll's panel at Anime Expo, the bomb was dropped. The anime was in production, and the studio behind it was Bones Film. Think about what that actually means. Arakawa, Bones, again, together. That specific combination is the same one that gave us Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, widely considered by many to be the greatest anime of all time. So when that duo announces a new project, the entire fandom holds its breath. And the wait lasted until April 4th, 2026, when the first episode aired on Tokyo MX and Crunchyroll simultaneously. But what is this story exactly? The anime takes place in a world where certain humans have the ability to control supernatural creatures called Daemons, powerful entities that exist in pairs. And at the center of everything are two twins, Yuru and Asa, described in prophecy as the children who sunder day and night. Yuru grew up in Higashi, an isolated village high in the mountains, completely cut off from the modern world, a community living at the pace of a feudal era, with bows, simple food, no technology, a place outside of time. Asa, on the other hand, grew up in the modern world, in what the residents of Higashi call the lowlands, the contemporary civilization the village never knew. The two were separated as infants, and neither of them truly knows the other exists. Yuru knew an Asa, but she wasn't the real Asa. And then comes the narrative gut punch of the first episode. You start watching that almost feudal opening, bows, nature, a quiet daily life, and your brain automatically relaxes. You think, okay, I know where I am. It's a medieval fantasy anime. I've seen this before. But then the helicopters arrive, and the smartphones, and the firearms, and the entire village begins to be massacred. Put yourself in Yuru's shoes for a second. You've spent your entire life in a place where time stood still, where the most advanced technology that exists is a well-crafted bow and arrow, where community is everything and family is sacred, where your twin sister was the center of your entire world. And then, in a single moment, all of it is destroyed by people carrying weapons you've never seen, by supernatural creatures appearing out of nowhere, by truths about your own sister that flips your entire perception upside down. What do you feel when you discover that the person you trusted most was carrying a secret that demolished the only world you ever knew? That discomfort is what this anime plants in you from the very first episode, and it never goes away. Critical reception was nearly unanimous on this point. The first episode of Daemons of the Shadow Realm doesn't explain anything. It makes you feel. And that is a very deliberate choice, very precise, very Arakawa. Because Yuru's disorientation isn't a stylistic device, it's the central experience of the anime. The camera places you so deep inside his head that when the helicopters arrive, you're lost too. You recognize the technology, but Yuru doesn't. And that gap between what the viewer knows knows and what the protagonist understands creates a narrative tension that is absurdly effective. It's a brave choice. Most anime hands you a protagonist who adapts quickly, who within 2 episodes has already figured out the rules of the game, already unlocked his awakening power, already knows what he needs to do. Yuru doesn't. He's completely in the dark, and that keeps the mystery alive in a way very few anime manage in their opening episodes. Now, let's talk about Asa, because she's the most fascinating character in this entire work. While Yuru represents the past, isolation, and stolen innocence, Asa represents the absolute opposite. She grew up in the modern world. She leads a group. She makes cold, violent decisions. And when you see her in action in the first episode, the first question that rises is inevitable. Is she the villain or the hero? And the series doesn't answer, at least not in the early episodes. Asa seems to carry real conviction, real accumulated pain, her own sense of justice, all wrapped in a brutality you didn't expect from a shonen protagonist. She isn't the sweet girl her brother lost. She's something else, something more complex, more wounded, more dangerous. And when an anime manages to create that kind of moral ambiguity right from the start, when you don't know whether to root for or fear a character, it earns a narrative depth that is genuinely rare. Now, let's talk about what everyone was waiting for. The animation. Bones Film delivered what it promised. The invasion scenes in the first episode are fast, heavy, and well choreographed. The visual contrast between modern technology and supernatural creatures creates some genuinely powerful moments. There's something almost disturbing about watching a military helicopter fly over a village of medieval archers while enormous daemons tear everything apart around them. And the score by Kenichiro Suehiro, the same composer behind ReZero and Golden Kamuy, holds every moment together with that urgency you feel in your chest before you even understand what's happening. The opening theme, Tobotoki by Vaundy, arrives with that electric energy the artist is known for, and the ending theme, Toboyo by Yama, closes each episode with a melancholic lightness that contrasts perfectly with the chaos you just witnessed. It's a remarkably precise musical curation, but there's one element that deserves special attention: the character Data. Data is exactly the kind of character who walks into a scene, dominates everything, explains nothing, and walks back out leaving more questions than answers. He fights. He survives situations that don't make sense. He demonstrates a power that hasn't been fully explained yet. And every time he appears, the narrative accelerates in a way that keeps you on the edge of your seat. The dynamic between Data and his subordinate echoes iconic characters from established shonen series, but with an individual identity that gradually separates itself from those references. And one of the Daemons, Left, has already drawn particular attention for a fierce temperament and a power that seems to go far beyond what's been shown so far. That character has everything it needs to become one of the standout figures of the series as the episodes progress. Now, let's put something important in context. Why does Daemons of the Shadow Realm matter so much in 2026? Because the shonen anime calendar this year has a real gap. The major titles that dominated recent years are either on hiatus, concluded, or in transitional arcs. And that vacuum created an opening that Daemons walked into at exactly the right moment. With 24 confirmed episodes distributed across 2 consecutive cours, the series has room to breathe, build, and develop. This isn't an anime that's going to wrap everything up in 12 episodes and disappear. Arakawa has time to work the narrative at the pace she prefers. Functional action, supporting characters who carry real weight from their first appearances, and that emotional maturation that only shows up when a story has time to grow. For those who've read the manga, the series already has over 12 published volumes from Square Enix, with over 6 million copies in circulation as of March 2026. The manga is being published in Brazil by Editora JBC, so you can follow the story beyond what the anime has already covered. But the anime is completely accessible to anyone who has never touched the source material. And that matters. You don't need to have read anything to walk into the story. It receives you, it knocks you down, and it holds you there. The comparison to Fullmetal Alchemist is inevitable, and it was raised by critics themselves from launch day. The character design strongly echoes Arakawa's classic aesthetic. Yuru has something of Edward Elric about him, that young, determined protagonist carrying a weight he doesn't yet fully understand. But here, the tone is crueler from the very beginning, more chaotic. There's no gradual world building where you have time to grow attached before the losses start arriving. Here, the world runs you over in the first episode. And that difference in pacing gives the anime its own identity, one that doesn't need to live in the shadow of its creator's greatest legacy. She's building something new, something that carries the essence of arakawa. Family bonds, sacrifice, the real cost of power within corrupt systems, but with a more immediate cruelty, a more visceral urgency. The series still has points to develop. The most honest criticism acknowledges that episodes 2 and 3 shift the tone somewhat compared to the brutality of the premiere, and that imbalance is real. There are moments where you sense the anime is still trying to decide exactly what it wants to be, that blood-soaked first episode or an adventure fantasy with humor and heart. The answer probably lives in both. Arakawa has never been a storyteller of extremes. Fullmetal Alchemist balanced violence, humor, and emotion in a way very few have managed since. Daemons is going to need to find that same balance, and the early episodes suggest the series is still calibrating. But what it has built so far is solid, very solid. The central mystery, who the twins really are, what the system of power is that manipulated them from birth, what the Daemons truly represent in this world, is alive and working. And there's something about the way the series holds on to its answers that recalls the specific pleasure of watching an anime that trusts its audience's intelligence. The series doesn't over-explain. It respects you enough to let you arrive at some conclusions on your own. And that is rare. Worth mentioning as well, the Netflix release is confirmed for July 4th, 2026, with weekly episodes every Saturday. So if you haven't found the series on Crunchyroll yet, there's a second window coming. And with Portuguese subtitles already available and the English dub already airing, the barrier to entry has dropped considerably. The Brazilian Portuguese dub has also been confirmed. The voice cast was announced by Crunchyroll in May 2026, so it won't be long before you can watch the whole thing dubbed if that's your preference. This is the reality of anime right now. Daemons of the Shadow Realm arrived at a moment when we needed something new. Not a sequel, not a second season, not an adaptation of something everyone already knew. An original story, with soul, with mystery, with characters we still don't fully know. And that alone is reason enough to sit down and watch. But there's one thing this anime still hasn't answered, and it's going to keep nagging at me through the coming episodes. If Asa grew up in the modern world knowing that Yuru existed, why did she destroy the one place where he was still protected? Did she go to that village to find her brother, or to make sure he would never discover the truth about who they really are?